Alright, let's get this out of the way. Yeah, Doom Annihilation is bad. Like, really bad. But I think it's fair to say, based on the trailers and the direct-to-DVD, Blu-ray, and digital nature of the film, that the overall quality wasn't expected to be on the high side. But what I will say is I expected something better than Universal's first attempt in 2005. I don't want to spend my time bashing the film on the easy things, because I think we all knew that was coming. Yes, the special effects are bad, even though they delayed the film to touch up on the visual effects. Yes, the acting is terrible. Yes, the dialogue is laughably bad at times.
In all recorded human history, there's never ever been any evidence of extraterrestrial life.
It's just because there hasn't been doesn't mean there won't. And they are going to rue the day.
They fucked with me, Doc. I'm their awful nightmare.
But Doom Annihilation from start to finish is pretty boring and never once invokes the feeling or atmosphere of Doom. But again, we all knew that was kind of coming, right? Like I said before, nothing about the build-up to this film was looking like something fans should be excited about. Before watching the film, I was hoping to at least get something that was different from Doom 2005. And while it does have some new things like an actual scene in some form of hell, it's weird how similar Annihilation is to Doom 05. But let's talk a bit about that original film so we can make some comparisons. As a diehard fan, I have to admit that I don't hate Doom 05, but wait, hear me out. That's only from a pure movie standpoint. If it was called anything other than Doom, it probably would have done a lot better. But Doom 05 is, in my opinion, a decent sci-fi movie that's kind of smart and cool, but in terms of being a movie based on Doom, it's absolutely horrible. Doom 05 suffers because it had no idea what makes Doom Doom. But to be fair, this is in a pre-Doom 2016 world when Doom was simply sprites and a couple walls of text. It definitely took more cues from Doom 3 than the original two games, which is where a lot of its character design comes from, including some of the demons. But in the end, Doom 05 is a movie that tried to sprinkle in things like chainsaws and Hell Knights and creatures that resemble imps and a BFG that doesn't even shoot a green blast and try to pass it off as Doom. It's basically an imposter in every way. And while Doom Annihilation corrects the color of the BFG shot, everything else like Doom 05 feels like a desperate attempt to tie in Doom into a super low-budget sci-fi movie. Doom Annihilation at least attempts to follow the original games in that the portal opens to some form of hell, while on the contrary, Doom 05 instead tried to adapt it into some form of experiment gone wrong with chromosomes and all that stuff, and it's actually kind of hard to follow. So I guess Annihilation gets a point up in that regard of following the source material a little bit better, but that's not saying much. I would say more about Annihilation, but there just isn't much substance to dive deep into. Until the final act of the movie, nothing really happens. People die that you don't really care about, and there isn't even a lot of good action to keep you entertained. But seriously, there isn't much to the plot of this film at all. The main character, Joan, is completely forgettable and has zero depth to her character. She is really the only character on screen that even gets any kind of real development. And that development is boring and cliche and tries to sort of wrap things up in a way that makes sense, but at the end of the day has absolutely nothing to do with Doom. And if you do make it to the final act of this film and Joan finally goes to hell, it's completely underwhelming in every aspect. Throughout the film, there's another throwaway character that sort of drops hints that maybe the demons were before us and maybe they're aliens and yada yada yada. It's all typical sci-fi cliched junk, but it never amounts to anything. Nothing happens in this movie. But what's even stranger to me about Annihilation is how much it actually has in common with Doom 05 when it comes to structure and characters of the film. The whole military setup is very similar, and each movie follows a group of Marines walking into an unknown situation that has to do with some form of teleportation. They don't quite understand it, but what they do know is all hell is about to break loose. But even the side plots of the film are kind of the same, and they both center around one character not being military trained, so they have to escort them to do all the science stuff, since the other characters only know how to shoot. Even the stereotypes are similar between both the commanders in this case, with The Rock and whoever this guy is, all being about the mission and nothing else. You have the quirky guy who is secretly a coward and doesn't want to be there because this is all just so fucked up. And then you have the supporting character actually being the main protagonist, with some mysterious backstory that somehow ties everything in loosely at the end. I could go on and on about how these movies are similar, but you get the point. What's strange to me about this is that Doom 05 was widely criticized by everyone for being so flat in this regard. A movie filmed with characters that have no development, and from the gamer's side has absolutely nothing to do with Doom. But hey, the first person scene is still kinda sweet. Doom Annihilation somehow managed to not only make the same exact mistakes as Doom 05, but also continued them and tried to drop little winks and nods to the audience in some sort of attempt to win them over and saying that we understand Doom, we played it. One of the scientists they find dead has the name of John Carmack. Get it? Wink wink. Hey, Joan killed the zombie with a chainsaw because Doom has chainsaws. The sergeant guy has a double-barrel shotgun because Doom 2 had one, and unless I missed it, which is entirely possible, he never even uses it. Hey, remember how Doom had keycards? We've got those too. But let's talk about the BFG 9000. For whatever reason, the fact that the BFG in Doom 05 fired a blue-colored blast really pissed me off. And while I mentioned earlier that they got the color of the blast right this time, they still managed to fuck up how the gun works. Even though the first time Joan uses the BFG, they set it up perfectly for her to kill a group of enemies, since you know that's what the BFG does. But no, instead it just kills one demon at a time. This might seem like a nitpick, but this is truly where I just said why out loud and completely checked out of Doom Annihilation. I then couldn't help but think this can't be that difficult. Adapting Doom into something competent shouldn't be this freaking hard, especially considering the landscape of movies right now with stuff like John Wick. It seems like now more than ever it should be easier to make a simple film about a badass that kills everything in sight because it's just what he has to do. But we also live in a post-Doom 2016 world where the game basically did the work for them and showed them how to build the Doomslayer into a character. Doom 05 didn't have much to work from. Doom was special for many reasons, but the story was not one of them, so trying to write a story based off the original game design in Doom 3 probably wasn't the easiest. Now that doesn't excuse the fact of how poor it was, but whoever wrote Doom 05 didn't understand why Doom was and is so special to its fans. It wasn't the fact that there was a chainsaw or the BFG 9000 was so devastating. Doom has character and class. The entire package from the design of the monsters to the weapons have style. All the parts individually don't work, but when you combine the chainsaw and the BFG with the demon design and the world design and the plasma cannon and that Doom shotgun, the Doom guy's awesome facial expressions, the sheer weight and devastation of the cyber demon, it's only when you combine all of those things you have something special, and you have one of the best and most iconic games in the history of gaming. You can't just sprinkle in a chainsaw and some imp-looking creatures with The Rock and Carl Urban and call it a day, and that's exactly what Doom 05 did, and that's why it failed. Doom Annihilation has no excuse. Doom 2016 did all the work for them and basically gave the franchise a story that not only was incredibly cool and deep, but it created a character that was badass and easy to enjoy. The whole mythos behind the Doomslayer basically being a god and the demons being terrified of him seems like something that can be adapted into a film in a positive and fun way. But instead, for whatever reason, Doom to movie writers equates to military operations. I obviously can't speak for everyone, but I've never talked to someone that's played Doom and said, man, I just really wish they had some more Call of Duty in it. The movie basically writes itself at this point. Even a straight up rip or rendition of Doom 2016 would have been miles better than what Doom Annihilation ends up being, which is yet another video game movie that completely misses the mark on not only what makes the franchise it's based off unique and cool, but also why it resonates with fans. The fact that Doom Annihilation only had imps and not a single other demon is yet further proof of how these studios just don't get it. You don't have Doom unless you have demons. Which brings up the question I have for anyone who greenlit this movie. Why? Why was this film made? Because it certainly wasn't made for people who enjoy the games in the franchise, because it has next to nothing to associate it with Doom. And if you aren't trying to appeal to those people, who are you trying to appeal to? Who is your audience? Because I certainly don't know. Doom Annihilation turned out even worse than I expected, and while Doom 05 has a ton of issues, you could at least remove the Doom part and you had something that was entertaining to watch from time to time. I myself thought Doom 05 was going to be the worst the Doom movies ever could be, and it was inconceivable that the name Doom could be treated worse. Yet, Doom Annihilation has managed to pull it off. It's next to 90 minutes of boring sci-fi action that uses the Doom name to exploit people into thinking it has some relevance to the iconic franchise, when in reality, this film is a bastard of hell itself. Thanks, Universal.
Can't believe you're bringing that weak-ass shit.
You got your toy. I got mine.